Louisa had last seen her brother in the morning, some 9 hours before the Ashworths' annual spring soiree. Her aunt was in the parlour, arguing with the seamstress, and her uncle had dragged his valet out into the garden, because the buttonhole supplied for the last 3 dinners he'd attended hadn't passed inspection. Uncle Archie had always been persnickety about his buttonholes. Louisa had just finished having her new gown fitted for the last time, and gone in search of her aunt, who insisted on giving her approval to the latest set of alterations, particularly the length of the hemline, which had been altogether too low at the last fitting. With everyone else in the house duly accounted for, Louisa was curious when she heard rustling in her uncle's study. It was the only room in the house that was considered out of bounds, even to family, unless, of course, one received a formal summons. As she made her way down the hall to investigate, she found the door nearly closed, all but an inch. She peered cautiously through the crack before bursting into the room. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed at her brother, shutting the door softly behind her. Paul wore a faded blue button-down, wrinkled at the sleeves, and a tweed flat cap pulled low over his brow. He sat in Uncle Archie's chair in an irreverent forward slouch, his lean frame dwarfed by the size of the gleaming mahogany desk. He was rifling through one of the lower drawers when Louisa came in. Her words did nothing to startle him out of his progress. "Hello, Lou," he said without looking up. The name stung, just as it was meant to. Only her father had ever called her that. He'd wanted to name her Eloise, after a beloved aunt on his mother's side. But her mother had known an Eloise in her younger years who had given the name a much less inspiring association. She suggested they call her Louisa instead, for it had a similar ring. After a few days of strenuous negotiations, her father had drawn up the following compromise, that she may be christened Louisa, so long as he was free to call her Lou.